Please welcome Traverse City resident Chasten.
Hello. Hi, Traverse City. How we feeling? It is so good to be home, isn't it? Maybe it's the middle school teacher in me, but let's just take a moment right now. Look around this room. You're not alone in this fight. Doesn't it feel good to be standing next to neighbors? Doesn't it feel good to be standing next to people who are fighting for your families? I don't know about you, but if you're spending all day on the news or on Twitter or whatever we're supposed to call it these days, it can feel pretty dark, right? It's designed that way. They want you to feel that way. Spend all your time on social media watching 24-hour news so that you feel helpless. But we're not helpless, are we? No, because we're here. You're standing next to people who are lacing up their shoes, hitting the phones, knocking on doors because they care about you. So, however you have felt in the last couple days, whether you're getting exhausted with the outrage or the racist, homophobic, xenophobic things that Donald Trump is saying at Madison Square Garden, recognize that you are surrounded by people right now who care about you, who are in this fight for you. I'm having a little bit of a pinch me moment because as someone who grew up just outside of Traverse City, who grew up here in northern Michigan, I never thought this would happen. I really didn't. And I'm trying not to get a little emotional because my kids are sitting right there. Growing up in northern Michigan, I don't know about you, I don't know what your family was like, but in my family, we were told not to talk about politics. You don't want to ruffle any feathers. You don't want to ruin a good Thanksgiving dinner. Well, right now, it's time to ruffle some feathers. I feel like in a way we didn't talk about politics because we felt like politics wasn't talking about us. I am the product of a hardworking set of parents. My dad has owned a landscaping company here my entire life. In the winter, my mom and dad make handmade Christmas wreaths. Before there was a Great Wolf Lodge in Coles, if anybody remembers, there was a little white stand on the side of the road. And that's where I would help my dad sell Christmas trees. Well, I would watch my dad load the Christmas trees up onto the car. I was a little small, but I know what it felt like as a kid growing up here to feel like politicians didn't care about you, especially as a young kid in the closet watching politicians in my faith group and people in my own community tell me what it was like to be gay in this country. I watched as mom was diagnosed with a very rare form of skin cancer when I was in high school, pre-ACA. And I would watch as we'd go through the Walgreens drive-thru and mom would get this topical chemotherapy she had to use. It was really expensive. Hopefully we were able to get it in the first place because insurance companies kept denying my parents because of pre-existing conditions. Mom would get the prescription in the drive-thru and then she'd send it back through the bank teller tube because we couldn't afford it. I'd watch as my parents made decisions about whether they were going to put food on the table for their kids or whether they could afford chemotherapy. And then I grew up. And those parents who gave me the best childhood a kid could imagine, I was sort of taught that you had to be one kind of kid in Traverse City. If you can believe it, I was a 4-H'er. I have the blue ribbons to prove it. But growing up in a certain environment, a certain type of politics, I was made to believe that you had to be one type of kid in Traverse City or you had to get out of here. And so when I finally figured out who I was, that's what I did. I couldn't even find the courage to tell my parents about it. I wrote them a letter and I ran away. Slept in the back of my car, putting myself through classes at NMC, working at Cherry Republic and eventually Munson. But my parents called me home because they put politics and they put prejudice aside because they wanted to keep their kid alive. I'm so grateful for their love. We got to recognize that not every kid in America gets that. Not every kid in America who packs up a bag in the middle of the night and runs away from home, they don't get that call. Not every kid gets the call to come home. And it was very hard at that time, I know, for my parents to tell their friends, to tell their church that they had a gay son and they were proud of him. We were made to feel that way growing up. And I don't know about you, but, we were made to feel that you don't want to mess with politics. But let me tell you, friends, neighbors, politics is going to mess with you, whether you like it or not. I learned so much watching my parents and their courage, putting that fear and prejudice aside, embracing their son. Politics is going to mess with you either way. But Democrats have been on the right side of history in so many ways that have shaped my life. Here I was growing up thinking that I don't want to mess with politics, they don't really care about me, but let me tell you about how my American dream came true. Mom's diagnosed with cancer when I was 17, pre-ACA. And what do Democrats do? They pass the Affordable Care Act, which allows so many families to afford the health care they deserve. Eventually, we get to that day where we're allowed to have these. Democrats did that. That's one vote. That's one vote on the Supreme Court. And right now, we're making a decision about a president who might pick 2 or 3 votes on the Supreme Court. And they're already flirting with taking these things away. For as much as I love my husband, and we have our disagreements about who loads the dishwasher, but I'd like to keep it. I'd really like to keep these. We got a call, Pete and I, after this dream comes true, a couple years later, that changed our lives forever. Short notice, got to get to the hospital right away. There's 2 kids that need you. Changed everything. And I will never forget that feeling of getting to the hospital and holding these 2 newborns in our hands. And all of a sudden, for any parent in the room, you know what it's like. That holy crap moment. And I don't think any of my views changed, but wow, did that clock in the back of my head start ticking a little louder. We only have so much time to get it right. So here's where I'm at in this election. Grateful to be here. Grateful for the dreams that have come true. Grateful for policy that allows mom to afford the health care she needs. Grateful to have this ring on my finger and have the family that fills my heart every single day. Grateful for progress that has come to our tables because of Democrats. And now, as a dad, a worried dad, I know I pull my hair out all the time, there's not much left, but I'm just looking for somebody who cares, who can speak to families like mine in the way that we felt growing up here. Do politicians truly care? Who's looking out for us? As a teacher who used to run lockdown drills in my classroom, every day I'd send my kids off to math and science, and then I would walk the perimeter of my school, check every exterior door, make sure that it was shut. And then I was the one running the lockdown drills, showing them what closets to hide in, what desks to get under, how to barricade a door. In a classroom surrounded by windows, knowing pretty damn well if somebody came to our school with a weapon like that I didn't stand a chance, and there was nothing that I could do to protect my students. That is a reality in the United States of America. So as a teacher, I'm looking for somebody who takes it seriously. Recognizes that gun violence is the #1 cause of death amongst young people in this country. I need a president who cares. And not only a president who cares, but a president who is ready to take action. That is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is ready to expand the ACA and fight to make sure that every family can afford quality health insurance in this country. You know what Donald Trump's health care plan is? He was asked at the debate, what is it? A concept of a plan. Donald Trump has been running for president for 10 years and he still only has a concept of a plan. But you know, as well as I know, when you're watching your mom battle cancer, or when you're holding your kid in the ICU like Pete and I were, when Gus contracted RSV, we were at Munson and things got bad really fast, to the point where they said we got to fire up the chopper, get you down to DeVos and Grand Rapids. And then a thunderstorm rolls in and you're riding in the back of an ambulance for 2.5 hours down 31, holding your kid, your hand on top of his head, telling him it's going to be okay, and you're not sure. And then you get to the hospital and you hold him, breathing tubes, wires everywhere, listening to the heart monitor in the background. You deserve a hell of a lot more than a concept of a plan. So my friends, it's deeply personal for all of us. It's deeply personal for me. And I know it's deeply personal for you. We got a couple days to go. You all have a why. There is a reason you're in this room tonight. And it might be different from mine, and it might be different from your neighbors. But please don't leave this room and think, well, that was really nice, and I'm so glad people are knocking on doors. Because you have to. And research shows that people are more likely to vote for the candidate you want them to support if somebody reaches out and asks them. So I hope in these final few days that you will find the courage to tell your story, because only you can tell it. Only you can talk about your mom or your son or your students or your patients. I know there are nurses here tonight. I know there are teachers here tonight. Only you can tell those stories. Please sign up for a shift and please go tell your story. It might be the only thing that gets somebody off the couch into the voting booth. And remember, you can vote early. Who's voted early? Incredible. I hope you will embrace that power in your vulnerability. I hope you'll find the courage to do it. You can do it, I promise. It's easier in groups. Find a friend, take a couple friends. I saw a meme today that said the same movies that are playing this weekend will play next weekend, so it's okay. It's okay. But it's not just me as the surrogate asking you to do it, it's me asking you as a teacher and as a dad. And there's so many families in this community that need you to go tell your story, because it could be you. You could be the only thing, the only person that can convince somebody else to turn out that vote. Go tell your experience about what it's like to be a farmer here in northern Michigan. Go tell your neighbors why a union has saved your life. Go tell your neighbors why healthcare has saved your life. Go tell your neighbors about why we actually need the Department of Education. But please go tell your story. Because when you do, I truly believe we will have a lot to celebrate next week, when it is neighbor standing next to neighbor, telling our stories and embracing our power. Please lean into that vulnerability and tell your story, because when we do, we win. And I know we are all ready to say that we are not going back a million times tonight, right? But we're not going back, not because it is just a fun slogan to say, but because we need, as families, as teachers, as neighbors, for this country to go forward. And we're depending on you to get this done. So thank you as a dad, thank you as a teacher, thank you as a neighbor for lacing up your shoes, getting on the phones, knocking on the doors, and helping us sprint through the tape. I know we got a little time in between me and my husband. I hate speaking in front of my husband. I give the emotional speech, he gives the rah-rah speech. So I like him too. I didn't realize there was a break in between us, and I was like, oh boy, I'm always the one that, wants to talk about this. Thank you. I hope in this break that you will meet the people standing next to you, because it is so much easier to do this with friends. Meet the people next to you, say hi to your neighbors. Maybe you'll meet some friends that you can knock on doors with this weekend. But we're all counting on you, because good government in the end is just about making our lives better, so that we can go back to playing with our kids. We can do the things that bring us joy. So we're not spending every night wringing our hands worried about what Donald Trump is tweeting or what, who he's poking at, so that we can enjoy what makes us happy and fulfilled. as family members. So take some time, get to know your neighbor, and please sign up for a shift to knock on doors. I'm so grateful to be home. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by friends and family and neighbors who are going to get this work done. So we have a lot to celebrate next week. Thank you, Traverse City. We'll see you in a little bit. Thank you.
Please welcome Michigander Pete Buttigieg.
Good evening, Traverse City. How's everybody feeling tonight? Anybody who thinks that the process of reaching out to our neighbors and asking them to vote and exercise their democratic rights, anybody who thinks that can't be joyful ought to be in this room to see how we're lifting one another up. This is what politics ought to look like. So here we are, 3 more days before Election Day, depending how you count. It's down to the hours. An election that could decide the whole future of our country, and an election that could be decided by just a few votes per precinct right here in the state of Michigan. No pressure, but we got to get this done. Are you ready to make sure Michigan delivers for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? My name's Pete Buttigieg, and I stand before you as a father and a husband and a veteran and an American, and yes, a proud Michigander. I didn't move here because it happened to be the center of the political universe. I moved here because I fell for this certain son of Traverse City, a teacher that you just met, Chasten. Technically Grand, but we're saying Greater Traverse City. He changed my life. And we are so proud to be raising our son and our daughter in this great state, in this amazing community, and bringing them to their very first political rally, which they seem to be enjoying. This is a community that has been so great to us. It is a community of honest and hardworking people. People like my mom, who made the improbable decision that people not from around here don't get, of moving north in order to retire, who's here. People like Chasten's family, his mom and dad, and neighbors who remind us every day of why it's so important to have leaders with the right values and the right priorities. I'll tell you, the conversations that we've been having, whether it was on 6th Street trick-or-treating, everyone knows the candy they're giving out on 6th Street, right? Or whether it's in line at Moomers or any other places around here we spend time, our neighbors talk about the issues that are at stake in this election, whether they're talking about the election or not. They talk about housing, which reminds us why it's so important to elect somebody who has an actual plan, not a concept of a plan, but an actual plan for building more affordable housing. Our friends and our neighbors talk about the cost of raising kids and how much we care about their future, which is why we need a leader who's actually prepared to make childcare more affordable, not Donald Trump's Project 2025 plan to abolish the Department of Education and use the money for tax cuts for billionaires. Our neighbors care about the basics, like safety, which is why they haven't forgotten that violent crime in this country went down after Donald Trump got beat and left office. And that a good way to send the right message about the rule of law in this country is to say no to the convicted criminal and yes to the prosecutor who put transnational criminals behind bars. And our neighbors are freedom-loving people, which is why they're not impressed with Donald Trump saying any American citizen who disagrees with him is the enemy. Freedom-loving people know that in a free country you get to say what you believe and stand up to bullies when that's what's required. And yes, in a freedom-loving country you get to be who you are and love who you love without somebody telling you what it is. And our neighbors in northern Michigan know that in a freedom-loving country, a woman makes her own health care decisions, not some politician telling her what to do. In other words, every day, our neighbors remind us why the next president ought to be Kamala Harris. And if you want a reminder that she's somebody who has her priorities in the right place, look no further than her running mate, my friend, somebody who, just like us, makes his home along the 45th parallel, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. Tim is the real deal. In a couple of minutes, I'll get out of the way so that you can see that for yourself. But I just want to share the thing I most appreciate about him, which is that his whole career he has lived out the most important thing anyone in public service ought to understand, which is that it's not about you. Think about what he's done with his career. A teacher, a non-commissioned officer in the National Guard for 24 years, a coach. What do all those jobs have in common? The measure of a great teacher is the performance of your students. The measure of a great sergeant is the readiness of your soldiers. The measure of a great coach is the success of your players. You live and work in order to make other people better off, and that's what he's been doing as governor, and that's what he's going to do as our next vice president of the United States. Folks, as you get out there knocking on doors, as you talk to that person, and every one of us has them, you can picture them right now in your family who we still haven't quite got through to. Maybe we haven't convinced them on how to vote. Maybe, just as important, we haven't quite convinced them on whether to vote. But think about why you're here. I know why I'm here. It's our family, right over there. It's the first thing I see when I wake up in the morning, be it at 6 in the morning if we're lucky, or 3 in the morning when one of them comes running into the room reporting their most recent nightmare. For our daughter, it's dinosaurs. Dinosaur got me, she'll say. And as a dad, I get to put my arm around her and say, no dinosaur is going to get you. Right? I'm batting 1,000 on that, right, P? No dinosaur is going to get you. And it feels really good as a parent to make a promise to your child that you're 100% sure is going to come true. With zero effort on your part, I might add. But of course, we're all here because of the promises we want to make to our kids that aren't going to happen with no effort. I want to be just as sure when I promise her that she's going to have more and not fewer rights than her grandmother did. I want to be just as sure when I promise them that they're going to inherit a climate and an environment that is as apt to sustain their well-being as the one that was handed to us. By the time they're old enough to get to middle school, that the only thing they got to worry about is middle school stuff like whose table to sit at and how to get through their classes and not whether they're going to be physically safe. And most of all, that by the time they're old enough to ask what I was doing, what Chasten was doing, what we were doing back in the 2020s, when it was all on the line, that we did what it took to secure their future by electing Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the next president and vice president of the United States. Thank you, Michigan. Thank you for coming out. Let's use every hour we have and get this done. Thank you.
And a thank you to your very own, to Chasten and Pete. They're a treasure to this country and the work that they do. I do not know where Pete finds time to do all he does, and everything he's done is done with excellence. I didn't think I could like that guy anymore, but tonight he just warmed the heart of a geography teacher when he talked about the 45th parallel. It's amazing. So, and